Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-filled book review on books 4 and 5 of A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, being A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. Like I said, this is going to be a total 100% spoiler-filled book review on books 4 and 5 of the Song of Ice and Fire series. So yeah, if you're still watching, it's your own fault if you get spoiled. I just feel like there's no way I can talk about these books. There's just so much I want to kind of get into, and I'm not even going to be able to get into everything. So what I'm going to do, if you want to read even more of my thoughts on these two books, I'm also going to try and remember to leave my Goodreads reviews down below, so that way you can read the whole thing. Literally, I kind of wrote like about 6 pages worth of reviews for these two books combined. So let's just talk about my general thoughts on the books, I suppose. I definitely liked book 5 better than book 4. Not to say that I hated book 4, because there was a lot about book 4 that I still enjoyed, but I definitely do think book 5 was the better of the two for sure. The thing that I had an issue with book 4, I felt like book 4 was more of just character development and character arcs, things more focused on individual characters rather than the larger scope of the story, if that makes sense. Whereas with book 5, I felt like book 5, it had a lot of character development as well, but I felt like it also went with the overall scope of the story and the overall plot and where the story is progressing to, which I preferred. Because I often felt like nothing happened in book 4, whereas a hell of a lot happened in book 5 that was really integral to the story. I often kind of felt that there wasn't enough peril going on in book 4. There was a few instances where some stuff would go on and I'd be like, oh my god, but like, yeah, book 5, there's just something constantly going on and characters being in peril and just some cliffhangers and you're thinking, oh my god. The only complaint I have with Dance with Dragons is that, you know, because in Feast for Crows you have a select grouping of characters. So I fully expected Dance with Dragons just to have an entirely different set of characters, which it did, but sometimes the two books kind of merged into each other. Like in Feast for Crows, you have a lot of Cersei and Jaime, but then you also have like maybe 1 or 2 random chapters of Jaime and Cersei in this book, which I didn't understand, because why wasn't those 1 or 2 random chapters in this book? Same with Arya. George R.R. Martin does the same thing with Arya. She's in the majority of this book, and then she has like maybe 2 chapters in this. So yeah, I didn't understand why some points of view carried over into this book when they should have just been in this book, because I often kind of found it a little bit distracting. I guess I'm going to get into some character specifics now, and this is where my spoilers are coming in. So I guess starting with Feast for Crows and talking about Cersei Lannister. Cersei was just so interesting in this book. I still don't like Cersei. I guess I like her as a villain, but yeah, I still don't like feel for her like I do some of the other female characters. But still, Cersei is just so fascinating in this book. Just, she thinks she can be a great queen when in reality she's not. I just loved all of the plotting she was constantly doing in this book. She was constantly trying to get rid of the Tyrells, Marjorie Tyrell specifically, because she just hates that girl. And what was just so fascinating about Cersei is that you think that everything is going her way. You think she is going to win this battle. But by the end of the book, everything just absolutely unravels around her. And I don't know, that just really opened her up as a character, and to really see inside of her as everything was just crumbling around her and all these well-made plots were falling apart. And so yeah, at the end of this book, she's basically put under like house arrest. So that leads into the 5th book. Like I said, Cersei just has some random chapters in this. And she goes on her walk of shame, which was so just amazing to read. It's kind of the first time I finally kind of felt for Cersei. I felt a lot of pity for her, really. But yeah, George R. R. Martin, the Walk of Shame chapter, that was, wow, amazing, so descriptive, so powerful, so moving. I like how Cersei, she's determined to stay strong. She doesn't want the people of Westeros to see her in this moment of weakness. And I love how determined she is to walk this walk of shame. And even by the end of her chapter, it's like she's still Cersei, and she wants some revenge by the end of that walk. Kind of talking about the Tyrells for a moment, going back to Feast for Crows, was anyone else kind of thinking about Marjorie Tyrell as a sort of Anne Boleyn figure, which is ironic because she's played by Natalie Dormer on the television series, and Natalie Dormer played Anne Boleyn in The Tudors, so that was kind of weird. But that was a parallel I often kept drawing with Marjorie Tyrell, with how Cersei was constantly trying to undermine Marjorie, and she was even trying to set up all of these fake witnesses about Marjorie being promiscuous, and then even trying to almost hint at Marjorie and Loras of incest. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of drawing the Marjorie and Anne Boleyn comparison because of what Cersei was trying to do to Marjorie. And then, oh my god, you guys, Loras, no! Loras, he was like burned really badly. Oh, the thing is though, in books 4 and 5, he's still alive. We haven't seen him die yet, so I'm very curious if Loras is going to die. I'm incredibly worried. I don't want Loras to die. And then moving on to Jaime Lannister in Feast for Crows. Jaime's chapters, I'm going to be honest, they were kind of boring. I did like some of his early chapters because he was around Cersei. I like Jaime and Cersei together. I like when they interact together. And I like Jaime in King's Landing, and I like Jaime when he's with Brienne. So yeah, I kind of found his chapters, once he got away from Cersei, I kind of found Jaime a little bit boring, and his arc a little boring, and yeah, the only exciting thing that happened with Jaime came in book 5 when, I'll get to Brienne later. When Brienne approaches him, she tells him that she's found Sansa Stark, that's right. So Jaime, he's about to head off, and he's supposed to be going to King's Landing to help Cersei, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So the thing is, when I get to Brienne in a minute, we know where Brienne is taking Jaime, so oh no, now I'm incredibly worried that Jaime's going to die in the next book, god damn it. Like I said, moving into Brienne of Tarth next. Brienne's chapters were also kind of boring. I didn't really care sometimes. I still liked kind of, I guess, their purpose, but yeah, I was still kind of just bored for the most part until the very end when she is captured by, I guess it's the Brotherhood Without Banners, if I'm recalling correctly, and they take her to Lady Stoneheart, who we all know is Catelyn Stark. And Catelyn Stark, she is pissed. She wants to kill everybody, make amends for her family, seek vengeance. Brienne, her chapter ends, she's hung alongside Podrick and some other characters, and you're pretty much left in peril if Brienne is alive or not. So then that's when book 5 comes around. Like I said, Brienne comes to Jaime. Apparently, Lady Stoneheart lets Brienne live for the time being to get Jaime, because Jaime is what Lady Stoneheart wants. So yeah, I am just utterly fascinated to know what's up with Brienne. Is it really Brienne? And what's going to happen to Jaime? Moving on to Samwell Tarly. Sam was really fun. I think a lot of people don't like Sam's chapters, but I actually kind of really liked his chapters in this book. It was nice to see Sam away from Jon Snow, away from the Wall. Nice to see him kind of as his own individual character. And guess what? Sam and Gilly, they finally get it on. But poor Maester Aemon, though, because Maester Aemon is going on this trip with Sam as well. Poor Maester Aemon dies. That was sad. I was always kind of hoping that Maester Aemon and Daenerys would eventually meet, but I guess that's not meant to be. Next, Sansa Stark, aka Elaine Stone, as Sansa is posing as the bastard daughter of Peter Baelish. Sansa, unfortunately, only had 3 chapters in this book, which was a shame, because Sansa is seriously one of my favorite characters, and my favorite interactions that she goes through, I love her interactions with Littlefinger specifically. Sansa, like I kind of said in my overall thoughts of this book, that this book felt more like character development and things weren't really going anywhere. That's kind of a lot of what was going on with Sansa. Sansa was spending the majority of this novel discovering the new her, discovering this new character she has to play, because she can't let anybody know that she is Sansa Stark. And a lot of her chapters also deal with her and Baelish trying to keep control of the Vale, so that way they can make their move to reclaim Winterfell at some point. And then Sansa's chapters pretty much end. Baelish, he's kind of gone off on a little trip. He comes back and he has good news, if it's good news, for Sansa, saying that he has set up a future marriage for her with some guy who is like the heir to House Aaron or something. So yeah, we're left in suspense about if this guy is going to be good for Sansa or not, and if their plans are going to work, because Baelish is telling Sansa that if they can get her married to this guy, that it's one step closer that she can reveal that she is Sansa Stark, and then that they can go get Winterfell, which I think is what is the big thing George R. R. Martin is building up to for Sansa. Moving on to Arya Stark. Arya was really interesting. She is just developing more and more into a wild child. It's kind of crazy. She's killing more people. This book sees Arya arrive at the House of Black and White, which is like the temple of the faceless men, you know, Jack and Hagar. I did like Arya's chapters. Sometimes I felt a little boring and nothing much happened. I did like when her chapters kind of intersected with Samwell Tarly. That was interesting to see them kind of run into each other, something I wasn't even expecting. And then the major thing that happens at the end of Arya's chapters in this, she goes blind. But then that's when we get into book 5. She has like 1 or 2 random chapters in this, and we see her struggling with her blindness, but she does regain her sight by the end of this book. And we also see her kind of become a faceless woman, like the faceless men. She kind of becomes a faceless woman, and she puts on a whole new face. So Arya is going to some very interesting places, it seems, and I'm anticipating that now that she has this ability that she can put on these new faces, that, you know, she still has people on her list, her death list, Cersei being one of those, and I'm wondering if Arya is going to be the one who kills Cersei in the end. So let's talk about Jon Snow. Jon Snow had some crazy stuff going on in this chapter. He's now the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He can make all of the big decisions. I kind of really like Jon in charge. Not only does Jon have to deal with his new leadership role, he also has to deal with the arrival of Stannis Baratheon and Queen Selyse and Melisandre, which provide for some of the most intense-filled scenes in the whole book. Jon has to face this dilemma throughout the book. You know, he can't pick sides. The Night's Watch are not allowed to pick sides in this war of the 5 kings. So he has to kind of weave this fine balance of trying to please Stannis, but also keeping loyal to his vows with the Night Watch. Some super shocking things that happened in this book. Jon, he kills Lord Janos Slynt. Didn't see that coming. He also kills Mance Rayder, who actually isn't Mance Rayder. Melisandre, she did a glamour on him, and he killed somebody else. So, yeah, I was like, oh my god, when Mance Rayder died, but then I was kind of relieved when he wasn't dead. And you guys, what the hell? What the hell? Jon's final chapter. He is surrounded by Queen Selyse's men and his own men, and he basically goes through like this Julius Caesar moment, and he's like stabbed to death. Did Jon Snow just freaking die? Jon Snow cannot die, you guys. Jon Snow cannot die! Especially, you know, there's all of those fan theories surrounding Jon Snow about his parentage, that if you believe in these theories, if he is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. So I feel like there's just so much more left unsaid about Jon Snow, and he just can't be dead. I'm wondering if Melisandre, you know, since she's a Red Priestess, kind of like Beric Dondarrion, if she can also give the breath of life and bring Jon back from the dead. If he is dead, I'm assuming he's got to be dead, and possibly she's going to resurrect him. So, oh god, I'm going to be absolutely devastated if Jon Snow is dead, you guys. Moving on to Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion was just so fun. I loved his chapters. Tyrion is one of those characters that I did not know what to expect, because, you know, in all of the previous books, Tyrion, he's primarily been at King's Landing, and he's primarily been around his family. So it was interesting to see Tyrion on his own, and I just had no idea what to expect from his chapters and where he was going to go. Tyrion, I think why I found his chapters so fun and interesting and fascinating is the amount of characters he meets and leaves. It's kind of ridiculous, because first he's with Magister Illyrio, who we know is the guy who set up the marriage between Khal Drogo and Daenerys. And then we're also introduced to Griff and a young Griff. And you guys, the best kept Game of Thrones secret ever. Griff, his name's not Griff, he's Lord John Connington, I think his name is. And he's like some exiled lord. But young Griff, get this, if this is true, young Griff is none other than Aegon Targaryen, the baby boy who we thought was dead alongside his sister. You know, that the mountain, he said he killed these two babies, but apparently not, because Aegon Targaryen is still running around. If this is the real Aegon Targaryen, we're not really quite sure if he is a real Targaryen or not, or if he's just a decoy. I kind of want to hope that maybe he's Aegon Targaryen. But then at the same time, I don't want all this conflict with Daenerys. I feel like there's too much going on that's conflicting with Daenerys' story, and Aegon Targaryen is kind of now one of those problems. So I'm very curious how George R. R. Martin's going to kind of interweave all of this. Moving back to Tyrion. So after he moves on from Griff and young Griff, and then he's also kind of kidnapped by Jorah Mormont. Wow, that was interesting. Wasn't expecting that either. Jorah basically wants to take Tyrion back to Daenerys to earn some goodwill back, you know, since she banished him into exile. But then on their way to Daenerys, Tyrion and Jorah, they're like kidnapped by some slavers, and so they're kind of put in the slave trade. And then that's when Tyrion meets this really nice dwarf girl named Penny. Really loved their interactions. But then by the end of Tyrion's stories, he decides to go join the Second Sons. So that's where we end with Tyrion. Tyrion just had so much going on. Tyrion's chapters, he kind of is in this book about every 2 or 3 point of view chapters. So yeah, you get a lot of Tyrion in this book, and there's just a lot that happens to him. I loved every moment of Tyrion. Moving on to Daenerys Targaryen, which also kind of brings me into Quentyn Martell and Barristan Selmy. Dany, there's just a lot going on for poor Dany. You know, she's conquered Meereen, but you know, she still has a lot of uprisings, especially from this group known as the Sons of the Harpy. So yeah, a lot of people don't agree with her rule, and they want her gone. So to make peace with the Sons of the Harpy, Daenerys agrees to marry this guy named Hisdar Lorak. And he's like a wealthy merchant of some sort. And obviously, you know, Dany, she don't want to marry this guy, but she needs to in order to make peace with the Meereenese. Plus, she's also struggling with her attraction to Dara Naharis. And then on top of this, Dany's dragons, they're getting larger and more wild. And Drogon, in the meantime, he's off just God knows where. And if Dany can't have any more problems, this is when we see the arrival of Quentyn Martell, who is the son of Doran Martell. Quentyn has been sent by his father to try and marry Daenerys so that their houses can join forces and that Daenerys can have the army of Dorne, so when she makes her grand entrance back into Westeros, she will have an army prepared to fight for her. But Dany, in the meantime, she doesn't want to go back to Westeros at the moment. She wants to kind of stick where she is. She has her reasons. So she refuses Quentyn Martell, much to his disappointment. But yeah, Dany's chapters, they were pretty interesting. Sometimes not much was happening, but her chapters climax when they're at the fighting pits, and in comes Drogon and just fries and crisps the whole place. And so she jumps out of the stands, she tries to tame Drogon, which doesn't really work. And the next thing that happens, she jumps on Drogon's back and we see her fly away with Drogon. Wow, I cannot wait to see that in the show. So after this, a lot of people think Dany is dead. And so we see a point of view chapters from Barristan Selmy from then on out, and it was just really interesting to learn a lot about him, because he's one of those characters that he's been in these books, but we just don't really know much about him. So I really loved his chapters. I loved seeing things from his point of view and his perspective, and him trying to deal with what Dany has left him. In the meantime, Quentyn Martell, he refuses to leave. He refuses to go home empty-handed. So he gets in his head that if he can kidnap Dany's other 2 dragons, that he can go home with pride and make his father proud. Of course, things go horribly bad, and Quentyn gets severely burned by the dragons, and he dies at the end, unfortunately. I was really surprised with the death of Quentyn Martell. I kind of just assumed maybe he was another main character. I guess not, because he's dead now, so I guess he wasn't important after all, but I did really like his character. He was interesting. He was just a character that, you know, he was conflicted about the things he was doing. He wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to make his family and his house proud. So, yeah, it's like, you kind of feel for the guy in some ways. And then going back to Dany, her final chapter, she's just out in the Dothraki Sea with Drogon, and oh, everything is going horrible for her. She's a mess. Right at the end, she does run into this random cow out in the Dothraki Sea, and that's basically how it ends. And then moving on to Theon Greyjoy. You guys, I didn't think I would ever say this. I think Theon's chapters were some of my favorites, weirdly enough. The big thing that is happening with Theon in this book is that Ramsay Snow, he's about to get married to Arya Stark, who, as we know, is a decoy by the Lannisters to try and have some goodwill between the Boltons. But of course, the Boltons, they don't realize that this is a fake Arya. So Theon, in his chapters, he is going off with Ramsay to Winterfell to attend this wedding with Arya Stark. And interesting enough, and this was just so fascinating, Arya Stark is actually Jane Poole, the friend of Sansa Stark, who, you know, she kind of just magically disappeared kind of early on in the series. So now we see where Jane is, and poor Jane is about to get married to Ramsay Snow. And Theon has to keep this a secret, because not only would Jane get killed, but Theon would get killed too for not confessing, hey, this is a fake Arya. I just absolutely love Theon's chapters. I loved his interactions with Ramsay and Roose Bolton and Jane Poole. And then his chapters conclude, and he's able to help Jane escape, and by the very end, we see him reunite with his sister, Asha. And his sister, in the meantime, has been kind of held hostage by Stannis Baratheon. So Theon, I guess, is going to be a sort of hostage for Stannis as well. So hopefully Theon and his sister are in a good place. Anything's got to be better than being with Ramsay Snow. And then just to go into some other random characters really quickly, we also have a few chapters of Bran. Bran's chapters were so boring, you guys. I'm just not even gonna lie. I'm not really gonna say much about it. Bran and Mira and Jojen and Hodor, they are able to finally get to that tree with the three-eyed raven. And we see that Bran is about to get some training for himself as he's a green seer and whatnot. So yeah, that's kind of all that happened to Bran, and that was just boring, sort of. And then the big thing going on in books 4 and 5, we see a lot of the Greyjoys, more specifically the Greyjoy uncles of Theon and Asha, and then also a lot with some new Martell characters. All of the Greyjoy uncles were pretty interesting. At first I was confused. I was worried if I was going to get confused about them all, but I think George R. R. Martin did a good job of giving them all very distinct personalities. I think I especially liked Victarion Greyjoy. I don't know why, I just really liked him. The Greyjoy uncle chapters can get a little bit boring and monotonous, but at the same time they're kind of fascinating. And then with the Martells, we're introduced to Prince Doran, and also the Sand Snakes, who are the bastard daughters of Oberyn Martell. I've been hearing a lot about the Sand Snakes, so I thought they were going to be in this book a lot, and they really weren't. They were kind of just kept locked prisoner the whole time, because they want to, you know, seek vengeance on the death of their father, so they want to go off and kill the Lannisters, pretty much. So they're kept under, you know, lock and key. So we didn't get to see a lot of the Sand Snakes, and I didn't really get a good idea of who they were. I guess I liked them to some degree, but yeah, I was disappointed with the lack of them, because people who have been going on, you know, since the Sand Snakes have been cast on the television series, everyone's been going on and on about them, so I just assumed they were pretty huge characters, and yeah, I was kind of disappointed that they weren't in here as much as I thought, but I did still like them. The chapters in Dorne were probably some of my favorite, in Feast for Crows actually. Plus, I also liked Arianne Martell. She was very interesting. She's like the sister of Quentyn Martell, the daughter of Prince Doran, and she wants to do this whole plot of helping Princess Myrcella escape, so that way Princess Myrcella can become like the new queen instead of her brother Tommen or something. But yeah, Arianne, she was just a really fascinating character. I loved reading from her points of view. And basically by the end of the book, with the Martell family, like I said with Quentin, we realized that the Martells are really kind of firm with the fact that they want Daenerys to come back and be the queen. And then you guys, just to conclude this video, like how A Dance with Dragons concludes, the final chapter, we see Kevin Lannister, and he goes into this room, and all of a sudden Kevin Lannister is killed, and we see that it's Varys. Varys has been absent from these two books, so I've been wondering these two books, where was Varys, you know? We see Varys come back, and he has not only has he just killed Kevin Lannister, but he also killed Maester Pycelle. So wow, that was a great ending to this book. So yeah, that's it for my very, very long book review on these two books. If you stuck around, bravo to you. What I would really love to do is to hear a lot more from you guys. I really would love to get into some more spoiler territory, especially if you want to kind of get into some stuff about the television show, where you think the television show might be going, what stuff from the books the show will be taking. So yeah, if you want to get into some of these deaths more specifically, yeah, talk to me. I would love to talk to you guys about these books and the things that you loved and hated about them. So that's it for this book review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you liked this book review, you may like these other book reviews. Bye guys.